Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Manny Lagos. Manny, we're fresh off the plane, let's put it that way. Essentially just a couple hours after getting back from Los Angeles. Tough day, tough night for sure for a lot of Loons fans. A lot of mourning, if you will, right away in the morning. But how are you doing fresh off the plane?
No, I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired. I
Yeah,
think I think one of the things I enjoy about doing the show with you, it brings up emotions and feelings that I've had not only even right now, so that's gonna be expressed, but
yeah,
also as a GM and as a coach. And the biggest one, whether you end the season like we did last night, which was pretty tough, or surprisingly, maybe sometimes you don't make the playoffs. Whatever it is, the next day is so hard because it's so abrupt. I mean,
yeah,
really, everybody, the club, the players, the staff, everything is focused on believing and working towards winning that game. And then when it doesn't happen, you're just kind of like, of course, there's some preparation for the realities of, it's November going on December, and
yeah.
we're going to be in a cycle of off season, which quickly turns into preseason. But long story short, it gets so abrupt. It does. It's a really abrupt feeling, and a little tired, no doubt about it. That was a late night arrival last night.
Yeah, the abruptness is always the thing that takes me by surprise, even though I know it's coming every year. The season's gonna end at some point, whether it's like you said, you miss the playoffs, you make the playoffs, you don't get as far as you want in the playoffs. There's always an abrupt ending, whether it's you're winning or you're losing. And it always just kind of takes me by surprise, anyways, like, oh, it's done. Like we're done for another couple months. And it's just you have to figure out how to like transition out of that and move on. And yeah, it's gonna be one heck of a band-aid to rip off today during the podcast when we break down this match for sure, Manny.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. Let's start with some with the sunrise this morning. You brought the abruptness. You're part of the staff and the trip. It was a great staff trip. I love
Yeah,
seeing all the staff go, and the excitement of the club, and the reputation was great. So I think from there, it'll always be a special weekend for me, regardless result, just from the integration of the players and the coaches and the staff that work so hard all year. It was pretty cool to see that all come together for a couple of days out west. And like I said, we it doesn't feel like it today, but we were in it for large parts of the season and even large parts of the game yesterday. So
for sure.
and then the second thing for me was the fans. Like I know I talk about this a lot when we have post Allianz fans experiences, but what a great fan experience on the road. I mean, our fans
Incredible.
freaking the best. They were just amazing. They were there, they're loud, they were hungry to kind of represent Minnesota. And I'll be honest, I actually thought overall the LA fans were good. That was a good experience for a game. I mean, the Galaxy's fan experience has definitely elevated over the last couple of years. It hasn't been that energetic, for me at least, in stadium for a long time like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that place was definitely juiced yesterday, ready to go. And they like obviously they had a show put on for them. So it it was easy for their fans to stay up and loud and boisterous. But man, that place had a lot of energy, whether it was from the home fans, but as you said, the very packed away section that we could see from our broadcast booth right across the stadium. Incredible fan support coming out and showing out for the road squad. Well done, Minnesota United fans. Let's before we rip off this band-aid, let's take a look at the other uh semifinals or conference semifinals action. Hudson River Derby, Red Bulls 2, New York City FC nil. Van Zier and Felipe scoring Felipe's goal. Wow, what a goal to open up that match.
Yeah. Outside of the left foot, half volley, just crushed it. Like
Yeah,
literally just roped it. And I think that set the tone. Like I think after that, the Red Bulls were like, "Thank you very much. We're going to make this game tough and tight and ugly. Win second balls." New York wanted to continually try to play out and try to kind of possess the ball to create chances, and I just think it was played right into Red Bull's hands. So ultimately, it was a unique Hudson River derby, but I like I said, I thought the Red Bulls showed why they're in the conference final of the Eastern Conference. They've taken out Columbus now, and they looked very good defensively. They go quote unquote away, and they adapt to the environment, and we're outstanding. They really played really, really well. So that should be a really good Eastern Conference final. Uh, Different, nothing that nobody expected those teams. But I think each of those teams probably think they have a chance to go to the MLS Cup.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at both those teams, Orlando getting past Atlanta 1-0, Atlanta failing to register a single shot on target. Orlando, when you look at that match, looked the more deserving side, but yeah, setting up for an excellent game between Orlando and the Red Bulls coming up on Saturday. Going back to the Red Bulls, what what about them? And you mentioned they've slain their own giants in Columbus getting the first round win. What about them that you've seen makes them so difficult to play? Because as you said, I don't think many people expected when the playoffs started and we saw the bracket shake out the way it did. Many people expected Red Bulls to be the team, to be one of the two teams in the Eastern Conference semifinals.
Yeah, I can be honest. I think they reminded a little bit of us in terms of defensively. They're very, very good, and they've got some really. Van Zier's been outstanding on the counterattack. Lewis Morgan's been outstanding, and then Forsberg adds a little more creativity. So the beginning to middle of the year, Forsberg's injury status was up and down, and I think they were still building into what they can be with them. And it probably was good that they were without him because then they had to get really good defensively. And I think they've just gotten much better all year long defensively. And I think once Forsberg came back, they added just a spice of offense to their kind of game. And that's a playoff ready team when you're locked down defensively, and then you have just a little bit of good offensive timing to really deal with some of these high powered offenses in MLS. They look great in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're certainly a dangerous team that will give Orlando an absolute run for their money. We'll talk about our predictions and who we think is the favorite coming up a little bit later on in the show. Western Conference side, Western Conference semifinal, the other one. Seattle finally beating LAFC, Manny. It took 10 tries to do it, but they finally did it in the Western Conference semifinals. Jordan Morris with an absolute dagger in the 109th minute. Great goal from Jordan Morris. We talked about that on the radio broadcast yesterday, but man, what an impressive display from Seattle on Saturday night.
It really was. And as we get to our game and just how wide open and wild it was, it takes a true soccer fan, which I think a lot of people in the show that listen to it are, to really understand what Seattle did against LAFC at LAFC in terms of you had a game that had zero shots in the first half. You had a home team that has played some of the best soccer over the last 5 years, probably in the league at home, in terms of at least creating momentum, attacking chances, attacking waves. And you have a team that Seattle that has historically figured out the ways and kind of this tournament championship style of what the playoffs are postseason. And they don't care. They just do it. They just win the ball and say, we're not going forward. We're going to move it. We're going to make LAFC work and win it back. LAFC, you want to defend in transition? Okay, but we'll pass the ball around more. I think they won possession in that game, which is
Yeah,
amazing to me. Think about that. You go to LAFC, playoff game, LAFC's at home. And again, I can see that sometimes if a team goes up and it has the lead and now they're defending deep, but this was a 0-0 game at home in the playoffs and they beat LAFC in possession. It blew my mind. And they didn't go create a lot of chances. They really decided to say, well, we'll take our chances when they come to us. And it was a great performance by Seattle.
I think the thing that kind of takes me by surprise when you look at the Seattle side is that it doesn't feel like there's very many, if at all, huge stars like they've had in the past. Like Raul Ruidiaz, he's a bench player at this point. Joao Paulo came off the bench as well. They don't have these, other than Jordan Morris, maybe they don't have these guys that you're like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna be they don't, it feels like they don't have several game changers like they did in the past. And like LAFC certainly has all across the field. And it's just, it's going to be a tough match in and out every single game. And they just went in there and they really took it to LAFC on the night, even though they went behind early on in that first half or second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a different type of leadership right now, which is really
Yeah.
kind of, I think, two aspects. One would be their defensive kind of just posture. Jackson Reagan has really kind of elevated himself as one of the better center backs this year in the league. And I think the other one is Christian Roldan. I think he to me is like one of the best MLS players probably of all time based on he's going to stay in the league his entire career. He has evolved into this player that does everything a team needs every game, depending on what the game scenario is. If it's keep the ball, great. If it's to get forward and create chances, help do that, great. If it's to get back and be ugly and defend more, great. And I think he's just one of those unique players. Ozzy Alonso's another one where his career is just based on making sure whatever style and identity we're playing that day, I'm going to elevate it to make sure we're good. And to your point, they don't have a lot of big offensive players now, but they've created this kind of steady, smart, savvy, playoff hungry team. And credit to Seattle. That's not easy to do, and they tend to evolve and figure out ways to do that.
Is this Brian Schmetzer's best job? It feels like, I mean, I know they won the title in the past, but this feels like, as we've mentioned, with the lack of like true game changing stars all over the field like they've had in the past, this feels like getting this team on this kind of a run that they've been on since what, about mid June, getting them to the playoffs and having their designated player signing Pedro de la Vega be injured off and on throughout the season and not being able to rely on him game in and game out. This feels like one of the better jobs Schmetzer's ever done.
Yeah, I mean, actually, De La Vega played, and he has not been that impactful, which is
Yeah,
in some senses, even more impressive that he's trying to get something out of him by playing him, even though it's kind of a net neutral or even negative. I'm being honest in terms of him being, like the stress of that much money and then getting the
yeah.
output must be hard on the group and the staff. And they figured out a way to get something out of him, even though they put a lot of money into him. I think I have to reserve that for the final. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're a little jet lagged, we're a little tired. I think you and I both might say some things today that we might regret. And he's done some pretty amazing miracles throughout his career in the midseason where we've maybe had the same conversation, and then they make the playoffs and make a great run. So my answer would be let's see how they do against the Galaxy, and then I'll answer if this is the greatest moment for him in his career.
My final question on this game, and I saw this pop up on social media during the game after Jackson Reagan really just put Olivier Giroud in his pocket, just didn't allow Olivier Giroud to do much throughout that match. What's it going to take for Jackson Reagan to earn a U.S. men's national team call? Because he's been outstanding for this team all season long.
Yeah, I mean, I Pochettino last time he had an interview, he talked about how he needs to broaden and make sure he kind of looks at the scope of all American players and particularly MLS. I think part of that is he probably got here and he kind of saw that, we know that there's a platform and an elevation to get to Europe, but he also understands people here kind of think it's just Europe. And Europe has all these amazing varying degrees of levels and play. And his brain is putting MLS within those levels in Europe. And we've kind of talked about this. MLS is exploding. It is becoming one of the best levels in the world.
Mhm.
Again, it might be pretty far from the top four-ish, five-ish leagues in the world for like the top team, particularly the Premier League. So long story short, yes, I think there's going to be a moment here where when you watch him live, you're worried about his speed, but he's big, he's strong, he's physical. I still think he labors a little bit too much on the ball at times. So it'd be really interesting to see at that national team level what he can, get his brain to think a little bit quicker in terms of moving the ball. But certainly seeing that evolution of him live, and I don't think it's just Giroud. I think he's been really good against a lot of teams
Right.
over the whole year. So I'm with you on that. I would like to see maybe, particularly in a position that we're going to need to look and for a while here to get ready for the World Cup. So,
Yeah.
and then in terms of Giroud, I think, in all honesty, the moment they signed him, I think was the moment that the adversity for LAFC seemed to become internal instead of external. And I think they lived a really tough second half of the year to find an identity to compete. And although they won the West, I think they had the most dangerous player in the league, Danny Bouanga. But it's kind of a one-trick pony. And I think Seattle very not easily, but said, hey, we can take them at home because I think that's their really best outlet. Bogush as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Drew. Like I said, I did see a lot of hold up play in that game for him. And I think a lot of times they were kind of making excuses like, oh, they don't cross enough, or like they don't get the ball to him in the right spaces. Like I agree they could cross more. They don't have a lot of great crossers, but Olivier Giroud can go and do other things to help this team. He can go there and get it, hold up the ball a little bit more and get some possession and get him out of some tough situations. And it just didn't seem like he was there. So I've ranted a lot about this, but I
Yeah.
like your comments. Reagan, let's get a shot in the national team. Seattle, outstanding. Congrats. Giroud, really, it changed LAFC when they signed him for the negative.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of with you on that, on Giroud. I don't think it worked out for them this season. So, Manny, you ready? All right. 6-2 final score last night for the Galaxy over your Minnesota United, who, when you looked at the halftime score of 3-2, Minnesota were certainly, definitely still in this match, and they had a chance to pull off the upset and come back. But it just, the second half came and certain things got away from Minnesota United. Your overall thoughts before we dive deep into this match on 6-2 feels a bit unfair.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about a lot. I would say the first what second did they score in? 44 seconds in? I don't even
It
know.
was within 30 seconds. Yeah.
30 first
Yeah.
30 seconds of the game. I just it mentally, you have a 3-week break. You're hungry to kind of prepare the guys and get ready to kind of have an idea of how you think this game's going to play out, offense versus defense, the kind of our ability to absorb some of their high attacking players, and then us open up the game and get chances ourselves. And it was just a huge punch to the face mentally.
Yeah.
I think I start there because that is probably why the game ended up being so wide open. It's just that hit us really hard, and it was great recovery, and the Gilboa goal. I got to be honest, was one of my favorite moments in the playoff away moments with the team, just because it was a great response to them scoring right away. But it really kind of set a tone where the game was being much more wide open um, than where we thought the game was going to play out.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody, when you look at this, when you looked at taking on the Galaxy, I don't think anybody wants to get into a shootout with them because we've seen what they're able to do, what they've been able to do this season as one of the highest scoring teams in the league. And you looked at that and you're like, all right, you go into that match with the Galaxy and you're trying to figure out how to slow things down, and giving up a goal within 30 seconds is the exact opposite of that. And I know Dan, Zarek, and I looked at each other like, oh, we're in for a shootout here. This is not the kind of game that we want to be in. And it certainly kind of played out that way. You mentioned it kind of just, it's a punch in the face. How does that affect your game plan? Because it happened so early, there's still so much time left to be played. Do you change much at all to your tactics, or do you just say, all right, that happened. Let's just get back to what we had planned on playing because there's still so much time left in the game?
I was proud of the guys. I think we stuck to the game plan after that, particularly in the first half, in terms of um, trying to take a deep breath and
Yeah.
build momentum of the style we wanted to play, and we did. I thought, it wasn't like we would and say, okay, let's have a track meet for the next 89 minutes. I thought we really kind of took a deep breath and started to kind of build momentum, and the goal was unbelievable. I think where my brain still gets kind of weirded out is like everything felt so wild and chaotic. Even our goal felt like amazing. I know all of us, fans included, we will remember that moment. It was just a great response. You
Mhm.
get scored on 30 seconds and you come back a couple minutes later and just it was such a good goal, left footed, just a screamer. And a great kind of repossession where we got the ball and had a nice little pass to Boa. Um, but I would still say the wild chaoticness maybe wasn't good for us. Um, and I thought too, like the refereeing got involved in the wild chaoticness
Yeah.
because to me, they have some superstars that realize very quickly if they embellish, if they fall, and sometimes early on the ref let a couple go early, and then he got overwhelmed a little bit. And so if I have any gripe, it would be probably that wild chaoticness got them that free kick that got the second goal, which then kicked off a wild first half. So um, that's my that's my morning gripe here. But I'm just kind of thinking to myself, that was a soft call for that free kick. I think.
There was a couple of them. I mean, you look at the
Yeah.
penalty kick that Dane St. Clair stopped.
Oh
Is
yeah.
like that's not a
Yeah.
penalty when you look back at it, and they went to VAR and looked at it and still they awarded it. That was another soft call. There was a couple soft ones that just kind of went obviously the Galaxy's way. You don't ever want to make excuses after a match like that, but when you're looking at the totality of everything, certainly the refereeing came into play. And
Yeah, no, I think you listen, you shouldn't make excuses.
yeah,
We got beat. We got the better team on the day massively won the game and deserved to. But
yeah,
I still think there's a way that we could have played to make that game close and maybe have the outcome. And unfortunately, a lot of things went wrong early that made it challenging. But I do think we should talk about the positive first half and keep focus on that. And then we can go into the second half, which was,
yeah,
became. But you're right. That's my point was though the PK call in the second half, the game was kind of over, although it wasn't, but it was close.
right.
Uh, that call in the first half set the tone for the guys diving as much as they did in the second half.
Hmm.
It was just one of those ones where we won the ball, we were there. Pereira says, "Hey, this is supposed to be kind of physical, so I'm going to win it, and I'm going to do a fair shoulder charge," and it gets called for it, and then it leads to a goal. So now
Yeah,
you have LA superstars. They're like, "Great, if I lose the ball, I just have to kind of put my arms up and dive. Even if I get the call half the time, that's something." And so the rest of the game, that happened. Every time they kind of lost it, they kind of begged for a foul, and half the time they'd get it. I just didn't. That part to me was on the referee. I think he
yeah.
wasn't quite ready for the moment. He wasn't quite ready to ref. Some of the bigger stars in the Western Conference, and again, I don't want to make excuses. At the end of the day, the Galaxy put that pressure on us and put that kind of stress on us.
Yeah, for sure. It took out a little bit of the physicality that we had expected there to be from the Minnesota defense and how that defense has been playing over the last month and a half. It kind of hindered them a little bit of playing physical and kind of making their presence known with the Gabriel Pecks, the Painsels, the Pooches, the Royces of the world, the Yoeliches of the world. And with them being able to get the calls that they did, yeah, it certainly took that out. But let's go back to the first half. As you said, incredible response to giving up a goal within the first 30 seconds. You had a flurry of chances almost immediately for the Minnesota United in the box. They couldn't get it past John McCarthy the first time, but the second time came around, and you mentioned Kelvin Yeboah. Just what a goal from him! Excellent goal. Probably one of the moments of the playoffs for Minnesota United. Just an incredible goal for him to get back on the score sheet after going a couple games without a goal. Something that he absolutely needed, and you could see that it certainly made an impact on him throughout the rest of the game to get that goal almost immediately in the game.
Yeah, I love the response. I mean, it was just a golazo. It was just the pure energy of the team, kind of saying, "Hey, we're not gonna make this easy. We're not gonna get run over for 89 minutes." And I think that's a nice reminder. We didn't get run over for 89 minutes, but I thought the energy to win the second ball, and I think we won off of Ricky Puig actually, if I can remember
Yep.
correctly. And then
Yeah, it was
kind of
Yeboah who came back and tracked back and took the ball away,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
immediately got up and started running back towards goal.
Yeah, and I just love that we let them know, no, this is not going to be an easy day. We're in this. We're here for a reason. And like I said, it 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 led to, like I said, a little bit more of a wild first half. Nobody could have predicted that the goals would come that fast and furious. Um, and then it felt like at 3-1 we were in trouble. But we finished the half strong. This is
Yeah,
where I don't think anybody felt like they weren't like we can get back in this. Um, at 3-2, even if we went to 3-1, I actually still think we were 2 goal lead isn't too bad. But um, I loved how we responded, got the PK. Uh, I love the drama of PK. I know you're a goalkeeper nut, and it was clear he moved early. By the way,
oh
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
not there was
Well,
not a doubt in my mind.
he didn't celebrate immediately like he had just blocked a massive stop or made a
Right?
massive stop in the playoffs. It felt like he knew immediately. Oh man, I jumped early. They're gonna get me on this. We're gonna have to
Yeah,
do it again. You could
yeah,
tell from his own body language he knew.
yeah. And obviously there was Dane saved one of the second half. There's so much that happened in this game as I
Yeah,
wake up this morning and think about. Yeah, there's 2 goalies on the field that are really good at PKs. He won the championship with uh,
LAFC.
LAFC a couple years ago, and
Yeah,
he's really good at PKs. Obviously, Dane's been locked down the last couple of years PKs, so ever since the Dallas series. Um, yeah, I just like that Kelvin got another chance, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm to step up. be like, yeah, I'm taking this again. I'm going to make sure I make this. We need it. We need to be back in the
Mhm.
game. Oh, that feeling of hope for the second half. It was to me a really adverse first half that I think we kept ourselves in it and we responded really well at 1-0 and particularly at 3-1. But the whole half, I thought we were battling. We were battling a really good team. We were battling, some offensive moments. We were battling, I think, bad refereeing. Like I said, I don't like to make
Yeah.
excuses, but it was
Yeah.
one of those days where everything went wrong that we needed to go right to give ourselves a chance to win against a team that, frankly, has a lot of better elements than us,
Mhm.
and we're just always playing catch up. And
Yeah.
that's it. It started with the 30 seconds goal in, letting the game open up 30 seconds in. It really started with the Harvey turnover,
Mhm.
uh, which we hadn't been doing those kind of mistakes for 2 or 3 months. So again, a lot of it credit to Galaxy. I talked to a couple of their staff members after the game, and outstanding by them. But it was a great season by us, but it was also just a day where we were just a little bit off, in areas
Yep.
that we hadn't been off for a long time.
How much you mentioned them being off? How much do you think the 3 week break kind of played into that? I mean, both teams obviously had it. Both teams had to deal with it. Minnesota had players who left for international break, so they were gone for 2 of those 3 weeks. Galaxy didn't. They were all together. And you could have looked at that either way. And I know that's a conversation Eric and I had before the broadcast when we were doing our pre-match interview, is that you could have looked at it both ways, that this is a benefit for the Loons because they had players who were playing games in game action throughout that 3 weeks, whereas the Galaxy, they didn't. They're kind of in that monotony at that point of 3 weeks, just playing against the same guys day in and day out. But it certainly seemed that it might have had an effect on the Loons in the negative, and there was a little bit of sloppy play, as he said.
Yeah, I would say you don't want to make excuses because the Galaxy had the
Yep.
same situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an unknown because you're going to these kind of microcycles of a game every 7 days, and you're building up to whatever your identity of your team is. And our identity for this final phase of the season definitely was our defensive kind of stalwartness and our ability to counterattack. I don't know. I mean, part of me was thinking about how defensive work is about discipline, and the margins, I think, if people don't realize, are so tight. For example, Joseph got turned a couple times that first half over the top, which he hadn't been getting for like 3 or 4 months. So
Yeah.
that's just a couple yards of tucking in and seeing where the pressure on the ball is, and that back line of five when we go to five in the back when we're kind of defending deeper. Those things really can affect it. So again, I don't want to make excuses today. It probably would have been different if our guys for those 3 weeks were all together and we could tactically create moments or situations where we could play 11v11s where they could work on that. But we had a lot of guys going international duty. So the adversity for us was different. Like LAFC or LA Galaxy, I think only had one guy going international duty. So I'm not making excuses today, though. They have their own challenges in those 3 weeks as well. I mean,
Hmm.
that's hard to keep those guys engaged and be there and how to kind of prepare for us too. So I want to make sure today's not about like this is
Yeah.
just us versus them. But I will lament that it was challenging in a way that it seemed like everything kind of just went wrong in a way that allowed LA to kind of bring out their strengths,
Yeah.
and it allowed us to kind of bring out our weaknesses, and we kind of lost one of our superpower strengths, which was really our defensive kind of shape and unity.
Yeah, so you mentioned that defensive shape. How did how did the Galaxy do something that it felt like since Leagues Cup break, very few teams have been able to do, and open up Minnesota time and time again? Zarek mentioned on the broadcast, you could see early on in that first half, Galaxy started dropping deeper themselves, forcing Minnesota to come out, it feels like, and that may have uh, allowed Gabriel Peck to be open so many times on that right hand side on Joseph Rosales, who hasn't had that many bad games this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does really start with Ricky Puig's ability to 30 seconds and go vertical. Like, I mean,
And hit a heck of a pass. You have to give him
amazing
credit for that
pass
pass.
outside of the foot, in stride to Peck's left foot, where you can cut back and
Yeah.
again, you've got a 21-year-old who's profiling for some of the best leagues in the world probably right now, and a great finish. But I think that it starts there, where now it gets tougher for us to kind of navigate how to kind of manage him and Royce, and And again, you have to chase the game when you're down eventually. You can sit back only so long. You got to pick your moments to open it up and go. And like I said, I still think we did a pretty good job given that we gave up a goal 30 seconds in, but the combination of the chaoticness, it's now wide open, the refereeing, I thought that gives them the ability now to kind of really dictate more of the tempo and the pace than we really wanted to. So um, I, I I think it's just a couple bad turnovers, and then we probably need a little bit more possession into offense to make sure that it hurt them when they sent those numbers forward, and we couldn't quite just get our rhythm going, in that way.
Yeah, and it just felt like things just started piling on as the halves went on, especially in the second half when you go in to the halftime with the penalty kick goal from Kelvin Yeboah and thinking, all right, we're only down by one goal, we can make this happen, and immediately Galaxy come out and Jovelic. Now, granted, Marco Royce was offside, but they immediately put a shot across the bow with Jovelic pinging a ball off the cross or off the bar, and you're like, oh man, Galaxy are clearly coming out and they are ready for this. And it seems like Minnesota were caught out a little bit early on in that second half when you would have expected them maybe after the way the first half ended to come out and be the one on the front foot. And it just Galaxy is just like, no, we're gonna be the team on the front foot, and they really put it to Minnesota and scored a couple minutes into that second half.
Yeah, I mean, it's listen. I'm going to finish with the glass half full. What a fun, wild, hopeful first half based on the 30 seconds goal. And
Yeah,
I to this morning, I think about our players, our staff, our fans there. I love that first half, even though we were down a goal. I love the playoff experience that we all got, and particularly even our players in the field. I think we got to remember this is a playoff experience for this club to grow and build on. I think the second half exposed that this was going to be a tough day. This was not going to be one of those ones where we can recalibrate now and figure out a way to have Eric manage and by subs and system changes. The Galaxy were just ready and hungry based on the fact that they were up. We were going to have to open up the game, and we weren't quite as sharp as we wanted to be, and they knew it. And I think they had some special players, special moments, and really Peck in the fourth goal to me was really where the game kind of got out of hand essentially.
yeah.
You could argue as the red card because that obviously made it easier for them to score a couple more goals, but I just think that fourth goal was really where the shift and too early in the half and too we didn't hit them hard enough to then allow them to be a little bit nervous that they're going to open up. Yeah, and it was a special goal. It really was a special goal.
Are you ready to take your Loons fandom to the next level? Join Minnesota United's official season ticket waitlist, The Preserve, for just $25 to get early access to tickets and first shot at securing available season tickets in 2026. Visit MNUFC.com/tickets/preserve to become a member today. Yeah, you give up that goal 5 minutes into the second half and make it 4-2. You go back down 2 goals again in the game. And you go into the second half, starting it just 1 goal down. You're like, oh, okay, we don't have to open up things right now. We can be a little patient. We can play our game. But when you give up that goal that quickly in the second half, all of a sudden you have to start coming out of your own shell, your own shape, and playing a game that plays really into the Galaxy's favor. And it certainly felt that happened in the second half. What tactically went wrong in the second half to allow the Galaxy it felt like this as the second half wore on. Maybe there was some tired legs for Minnesota. I don't know, but you mentioned some lack of discipline maybe in the shape for defensively for Minnesota. What happened tactically for Minnesota in the second half that Galaxy were able to just take over incredibly thoroughly throughout the remainder of that second half?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that this isn't a league game where it's just a 3-point loss or you're trying to scrape a one
Yeah.
point tie. It's win or lose, and it's when you're down 2 goals in the second half, you have to now start navigating the game. So very different in the first half, where the second half, I think Peck just did something special. Like he had a great touch, went around Diaz. Now he's running 20, 30 yards straightly directly at Boxall. Boxall has to decide how far he goes over because they have numbers going on the other side of the goal. And the next thing you know, he beats Boxall and Dane, and it's 4-2. And I said that before, but that kind of was the game for me because it wasn't because it was only a 2-goal lead. We could have, but like at that point now everything had to change. Eric had to think about what kind of players can I put in to give us a chance to get forward, to get numbers forward, to start to take off defenders and put on attacking players. Start to think about different ways that we could start to create chances, and we did a little bit. Like I we were at 4-2 through Dane's save, so
Yeah.
there was a moment there. If we get one, we could get two, and I really believe that. But at the same time, you could see that we'd have to get a little bit more desperate, and then the second phase was the peak, the red card, because at that point now we showed our frustration, we showed our
Mhm.
reality that the time was winding down, and that's just lended to the Galaxy. Now we had a ton of offensive players in the field at that point. We were down a man. We had to go press, and the Galaxy were like, "Thank you. We're the best in the league outside of Miami, probably at hurting you offensively." And so the game felt much worse than it actually was. I think there's a lot of moments where we really battled really well. We battled really well in the entire first half. I thought there was a couple of moments where we battled pretty well when it was 4-2, where we could have, if we would have gotten one, we could have seen if we could have done it. But at the end of the day, we were playing against a really good team that really knew how to hurt us offensively if we weren't quite ourselves and sharp, and they were. So, that's my answer.
Yeah.
Long-winded.
I know it's just what, less than
Yeah,
almost 12 hours since that game ended, it feels
yeah,
like.
yeah. In
Uh
some ways, I don't even think we've absorbed or you've gone through the arc of all the stuff that happened.
yeah.
And like I said, I was thinking of our crew that does all the hard work behind the scenes for the podcast, and I was like, wow, we're getting up at 9:15 this morning. And again, I probably got into bed about 3 a.m. last night. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what I honestly I hope everybody's reflecting on the good, the bad, amazing up and down season transition. Like I said, I am so excited for the future for this club, and I'm always so proud of the support, whether it's internal, great staff, the external fan base, about where we're trying to go. And I cannot and will not accept that this was anything other than a learning curve for us to continue to build, because I don't think a lot of external people, and probably sneakily a lot of internal people, didn't think we'd be where we were this far into the season.
No, and yeah, what we were talking about on the broadcast as the game was winding down and the game was finishing up, getting to the conference semifinals, uh, probably, as you said, especially to the outside world, definitely felt like, wow, you guys, that's an incredible season. That's an incredibly successful season. That's something you should be proud of. But from here on out, that should be something that's the baseline. It feels like from what we've seen from this squad as it's developed throughout this season and what we can see kind of the pieces being put into place here, that should absolutely be the baseline that you at least get to the conference semifinals, if not further from here on out.
I love it. Yeah, let's win some trophies. I mean, again,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. That's why we play this game, is to figure out the way to win trophies and championships and give ourselves an opportunity. And by the way, we're down today because we were 3 games from that,
Yeah.
and 3 games where if we had a different outcomes or a different on different days, we could have done it. I think this group did have something in them to find a way. We just went up against an outstanding team. I mean, they really. And I also want to tell our audience, we forget, I don't know, maybe 10 years since the Galaxy played this way.
Hmm.
This stuff doesn't come easy. That's why it was, even to me, this year was even a special run because
Yeah, this was
the other
what
gal
this was Greg Vanny's third, fourth season in LA. This
at
took time.
least, yeah, and wow, it some clubs it takes even more time. My point is,
Yeah.
this is the most historic club in the league, the most championships of any club in the league, and they've been navigating it for a long time and actually spending a lot of money on their roster and trying to figure out the right system. And it was interesting to be down in LA just from a neutral standpoint. Um, I went to the game the night before and then our game. It's there's some competitiveness between the two LA teams, and right now, obviously, the Galaxy has a lot of moxie that the LAFC's probably had for the last 3 or 4 years
Yeah,
within the
absolutely.
city, and you can kind of
Yeah.
feel it too. You can kind of
Oh
feel
yeah,
it.
for sure. Uh, as we wrap up this conversation about this game, when you look back at it, I know still so fresh on our minds, and maybe we haven't had time to look back at the film. When you think about it, when you go back and think about this game, outside of obviously not giving up a goal in the 30th second, what else could Minnesota United have done to maybe slow down an LA Galaxy side that came in scoring 9 goals in their first 2 games in the playoffs and then scored 6 last night? What was there anything that you saw the Loons could have done differently?
Um, you know, I would say I was surprised by some of our kind of it's hard to say like I was surprised how quiet Bongi was in that first half. You know,
Mhm.
I feel like we needed our guys in key positions that we thought were going to be able to attack the spaces when they throw numbers, get forward and do that. I think Joseph somewhat did that pretty well, and he had that one beautiful run in the first half that I thought was world class up the left side and like just really hurt them, and they had to really get back, and we reminded them that we were going to get chances, and we got chances. We created chances. I think that was one area where there was a tactical thing or whether Bongi wasn't quite sharp. I think we lost his kind of uh, superpower, which is being great defensively, but then giving us something unique that in a different way that kind of unsettles a defense and gives us a left side attacking presence and a right side. So I think in that first half we did not have a balanced kind of attacking presence to really hurt the Galaxy, who aren't that great defensively. And again, remember, they scored 6 goals. We scored 2 and probably could have had 3 or 4, and they could have probably had 7 or 8. But the reality was, I think we needed and had a little bit more balance. And again, just a little bit different kind of Bongi that has his superpower. I think that would have helped quite a bit. So that's a little bit about tactics. That's a little bit about individual kind of sharpness and performance.
Yeah, because when you look at the game, you look at kind of just the numbers in the stats, everything outside of possession seems very kind of even. 15 shots for Galaxy, 13 for Minnesota, 9 shots on goal for Galaxy, 6 for Minnesota. I mean, for the most part, Minnesota did a good job of keeping things relatively similar and having a chance in this match. It's just the Galaxy executed on their chances where Minnesota weren't able to when they had the ball. And obviously, Galaxy had 70% of the possession, which is clearly where things start obviously shifting in the Galaxy's favor. 680 passes to Minnesota's 236. And yeah, certainly things shifted in that department. But Minnesota, when they did have the ball, they were doing a good job of exploiting those weaknesses in the Galaxy's defense, just weren't able to capitalize in that final third. And we saw that in the second half. It's just they struggled when it felt like they struggled when the ball got into the final third of finding that key final pass to have a dangerous chance in the second half.
Yeah, I think we had moments where we got on top of them. I would have liked to seen our set pieces just be a little bit more dangerous. It wasn't one thing. I don't think the service was horrible. I don't think the runs were horrible. It's just that's an area where I think we're going to have to make sure we grow and build. I think there was some leap jumps this year in our set piece defending. I thought we did a really good job this year. I think offensively we were a mixed bag, and I think that is something the staff will really work on. I mean, we've got to really find these moments where we can almost be an equalizer. I would say this part of our team is we're going to be one of the better set piece offensive teams. And certainly we could have used a goal from a set piece yesterday because, technically, I guess, is a PK considered a set piece goal? I don't think it is, right?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Shouldn't
yeah.
be.
It should be,
But
yeah.
yeah, you had the Marco
Um,
Royce delivery on the free kick in the first half that Jovelli just kind of ran into open space and they scored on a set piece there. But yeah, there's a couple
yeah,
set
that was
pieces for them
disappointing
that they
because
were dangerous.
yeah, and we've been pretty good defending set piece. I feel like this year, and again, my brain goes to the referee making the call. I thought that was a really soft foul, and it wasn't just the play that led to the goal. I think it just gave them the opportunity to kind of embellish and dive. And
Hmm.
again, I think Diaz's second yellow, I got to see one quick replay. He did leave the hand up to kind of the back of the head,
Yeah.
but just the embellishment and like the reality that um, you're going to give a second yellow for that. You're going to allow the guy to act like he honestly got knocked out when it was listen, Diaz shouldn't have done it. Game was wild. There was some frustration because we weren't getting where we wanted to go. He's got to take some accountability for that kind of decision to want to be physical in that moment, a way that he did. But I do not like the fact that Peck embellished all of it, and there was a lot of that from Ricky Puig, and it started that he got the foul that led to the
Mhm.
second goal, and he's like, "Hey, ref, I'm going to do this the whole game, and even if I don't get it every time, I'm going to keep doing it because I kind of tricked you that one time." So I bring that up because that second half was wild and crazy, partly because the ref, I thought, kind of lost the game a little bit. I actually think he lost it in that PK that we had too. Like, at
Yeah, he
what
lost it in the
point?
first half, really,
Yeah,
for
like
me.
what? No, I just said it was that. I think it was that play and that call
Yeah.
because it just showed a little weakness where like it wasn't a foul, but he called and it led to a goal. And now the Galaxy players like we're going to keep tricking him the whole game. And I was so fresh with the PK just because I started throwing out some yellows. I mean, you got all these
Yeah.
guys like what was it 3-4 minutes? I mean, I think we probably deserve more stoppage time in that first half based on like that was insane how long he allows these guys just to sit in the box yelling at him. Get him out of there. Anyway, that was this is what happens.
Yeah.
You get in at three in the morning, you wake up, your brain now starts thinking about more things. Uh, and I just go on these rants.
That's the gloriousness
Yeah,
of doing a podcast after we got back at from LA at
yeah.
3 in the morning and right back here about 6 hours later and still what just a little over 12 hours after the game ended. All right, so final thoughts on the game, overall thoughts. We'll have another podcast after the holiday break here, after the Thanksgiving break, breaking down the entire season. So we don't need to
Sure.
go into the whole season review, but final thoughts on this game and kind of the way it ends the season. Obviously, on a very sour note, losing 6-2, but the playoff run, I mean, you really went toe to toe with Real Salt Lake in the first round. Unfortunately, just ends 6-2. Final thoughts on this match?
Um, I think I think we should have some good reflection, both positive and negative. I think there's a real quick way if we want to start with the negative. Yeah, we've got some work to do. We've got to make sure we realize that we're playing one of the best teams in the league, a team that has built this roster now over several years, which has had some struggles and adversity. So uh, there's no reason we can't build a roster and build a club that competes against these teams. And again, some people say, "No, it's about money, this and that." I'm just never going to buy it. It's about us figuring out a way to build a group that can deal with the adversity and try to navigate how we can win in this ever-changing competitive league. And I think there was a huge transition of leadership this year. I think there's huge momentum internally and externally. I hope the fans still feel it, even though that last night didn't feel like it. And I'm going to turn that negative into like it. It has a lot of good elements if you peel away of where we are and where we're going. It is a huge offseason to make sure that we don't regress, but we keep progressing to where we want this roster to go, and we want this group and this great kind of new coaching staff and their energy. So ultimately, I'm really excited about the offseason because I think we're in a much different place we were a year ago, and I think we've learned a lot, and I think the team is on a good path of expectations of winning.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I think there's definitely some good momentum that was built up over the last couple months of the season. Sure, there was the disappointing dip in the middle of the season that international breaks, injuries, whatnot had their play in, but the response to that to to fight back and get into the playoffs and then go on a run was incredible. You love to see it. This is just a really sour note to end or a really sour note to end your season on. So that's going to sting for a while. And obviously, the next chance we'll have is late February, early March to respond to it. But there's so much positive to build on throughout this offseason. As you said, it's a big offseason. There's going to be some changes, obviously, and we'll certainly be interested to see how that goes. But there's still playoffs to play, Manny. Let's do a quick preview
Yeah,
of the conference
can I
finals.
just
Yeah.
have, I'm gonna go back to the first thing I said too, which is, the sun comes up today.
Hmm.
Like I said, the interaction between the players and fans and our staff and after the game, seeing Eric Ramsey grab the guys and just being gutted, and they were gutted. We were, and just making sure they went over and said thank you to the fans, and to all our fans out there. I say this, but I genuinely believe top three in the league, maybe the best, and like it has to do with the relationship and the belief they have. And I still think it has to do with internally the people at the club that believe as well. And I think that connection is amazing. And then it goes to the players. And we arrived at the stadium. I think the fans got there like at 1 o'clock and just were going from the get go. Their energy raised not only when they went out for warmups, but even when the guys get there early and they just go and check out the field. It
Mhm.
just the level of just intensity was there. So I just want to end it on that connection, and that feeling is part of what we need to do is take that and get excited about working even harder, driving even more. Expectation of every department, every area of the club. We want to use and take that feeling and make sure that we're hungry to try to win a trophy because again, we've got an amazing, I think, group of fans that believe, and I think we've got an internal club and a great ownership that believes in us as well.
Absolutely, for sure. Conference finals coming up on Saturday. Orlando City, New York Red Bulls going first at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Who do you think has the edge in that match? I mean, Red Bulls are in a heck of a run. They're going up against an Orlando side that has played really well down the stretch here of the season. This is about as even as a match you'll find. I mean, this is a really good match up in the Eastern Conference that I don't think many people expected to be the Eastern Conference final.
Oh my God. This is one of those ones where if somebody had this in their bracket, I'd be like, no way. Prove it. Prove it. Yeah, this would win you a lot of money in Vegas. I just think it's Orlando, I think, has the edge because they're at home. You
Yeah.
know, and you mentioned one stat that really intrigued me. They didn't give up a shot on goal. Uh, that really helps get them excited about this next game, and has the coaching staff can really use that to get Orlando excited about. They're Orlando's always pretty good going forward. They tend to sometimes get stretched throughout games, so I think they have just a slight edge. But Red Bulls have an identity right now. They've used it really well. I just think the home team is probably going to be the difference in this one.
Yeah, I think so. Part of Atlanta probably not having a shot on goal was the injury to TRA early on in that match, which certainly hindered how they played. But yeah, Orlando playing really excellent defensively. And yeah, I think I'm with you. The home advantage will give Orlando a little bit of an edge, though Red Bulls have been playing so well that I feel like that game kind of travels really well. So we'll see how that goes. 6:30 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, 9 p.m. Central Time, LA Galaxy hosting Seattle Sounders. This is a heavyweight fight. Manny, this one is will certainly have a ton of eyeballs on it because of the two sides going at it and how they're respectively playing at this point in the year.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's hard for us to not imagine the Galaxy at home. We
Yeah.
just experienced the environment they created. And again, I said this is the best fan experience I've seen it for a while at the Galaxy Stadium. So it's hard for my head for not to see them take this. But I'll be honest with you, I think Seattle's going to try to do the same thing we did, which is to really kind of frustrate them offensively and let the game open up and let Jordan Morris and dictate how they counterattack and how they get chances, and Rue's not getting into spaces a little bit like Lode and Pereira do for us. So I would say don't sleep on Seattle, even though it feels like 6-2 Red Galaxy. The reality is they're going to go with the same game plan we had, which is like, what happens if we frustrate them offensively and how does the game open up in our favor?
Yeah.
And we didn't quite get there to do it ourselves. We saw the path to do it. We just didn't get
Mhm.
there. And the Seattle might. Who knows? So, but I have to take Galaxy just because I think at home, the way they're playing, it feels like they're unstoppable at this point.
Yeah, 15 goals in three playoff games feels like they should automatically be the favorite for MLS Cup at this point. I mean, when I'm looking at the rest of the teams in the playoffs that are left, Galaxy for me, there may be some recency bias after just seeing them do what they did last night to Minnesota. It feels like they're the favorite to win it at this point, Manny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Vegas odds had them.
Yeah.
They felt that going into before we played them. So, I mean, they probably deserved to win. No, they didn't probably. They deserved to win the West, and they kind of imploded at the end of the season. But I think the playoffs have played out where they have been the best team, even though the LFC won the West.
Yeah, absolutely. Manny, been good talking to you today. Been good kind of ripping this band-aid off and having
Yeah,
our own little therapy session just shortly after a very disappointing way to end the season. We'll have another podcast coming up next week sometime where we kind of review the entire season as a whole. So there's so much to discuss there. Roller coaster of a season for sure, but so many positives to end on despite the 6-2 loss. Looking forward to having that conversation with you, Manny, and looking forward to watching these conference finals and seeing who's going to take part in the MLS Cup final coming up in December.
Yeah, I think the adversity of our world. I'm gonna overanalyze it, over brag, whatever. We got up, we did the podcast. I mean, we got through our adversity, but no. Again, I do want to end on a positive that I've said it. That the trip had more positive than the game felt at 6-2, whether it was the first half hope or whether it was the staff integration, the fan integration. A season where we didn't have an identity a year ago, and now we have an identity going into this offseason. I think it's gonna be a fast offseason, which is exciting. That means you play deep into the fall/winter. We're gonna blink and it's gonna be January 14th, and the guys are getting ready to go again. I couldn't be more excited in a weird way as well, because like I said, I think the club is hungry to evolve and grow to, like you said, where this is kind of the base, and let's make a run next year.
You say fast off season. The season opener this year was on February 24th. That's
Yeah.
if that's the same thing. That's November 25th today. That's less than 3 months away at this point.
Yeah, it should be. And like I said, in my world, mid-January is when preseason starts for that.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a quick one, which I think I don't like. I said, I actually think our club isn't like, ooh, let's take a break for a while.
Yeah.
I think there's so many people behind the scenes that are waking up today and working really hard because we're ready to use what we learned this year, use our strengths and weaknesses to get better. And then that just gets me excited.
Yeah, there's a lot of momentum to build off of despite the loss yesterday in Los Angeles. Manny, been good talking to you today. We'll talk to you right back here on the podcast next week. Thanks again to the production staff of Grace Dearson, Evan Etler, Kyle Hayward for putting this all together, helping us out, helping us get through this very early morning after a very late night return to Minnesota. We very much appreciate it and have appreciated all season long. And Loons fans, especially a big thank you to you. Great travel squad, great turnout yesterday in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, couldn't pull the game out, but excellent turnout from Loons fans, and love hearing your comments whenever we get them. And we'll be back next week to discuss the season as a whole. We'll talk to you then.